Today is December the 5th. It's 9 a.m. My name is Dick Rhodes. I'm the chairman of the Budget and Finance Committee, and this is the scheduled meeting for the Budget and Finance Committee. I'd like to call the meeting to order. And our first order of business was if you can stand, we will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. We have all members of the Budget and Finance Committee here, so we have a quorum. I want to propose the minutes of November the 21st. So if there are any additions or corrections to that, if not, we will accept them as written. Thank you. Our speaker for the very first presentation has been delayed. So we're going to go off agenda a little bit here. There's some casual comments that we'd like to make, and I'll probably ask Cliff to make some too. But Cliff, I'm excited because I've heard the preliminary report back from our reserve fund in November is a significant increase in valuation. Would you like to talk about that? This is not official. This is really, it's not ready to be printed yet, but we just heard about this, and I think it's good news for us.
Yes, thank you, Director Rhodes. Good morning, everyone. A couple of things regarding the reserve fund. First of all, our reserve fund transfer, which was identified in our audited financial statements from CLA, was executed, and we moved roughly $4.8 million out of the reserve fund into the operating account to fund the rest of the capital projects that we carried over from last year. Some golf equipment, mainly the irrigation project, which was paid for in this fiscal year. So we were able to pull those funds out and pay for those projects. Secondly, on the reserve fund, yes, we do have the results in, and we have not finalized the financial statements. However, we did have roughly a $1.1 million positive valuation swing in the reserve fund, which pulls us with the investment income. We're up roughly $308,000 in our investment account for the year, which is good news. And so far, unofficial through December, we're up another $200,000 or so. So it's, the 10-year has come down to 4%, and starting off at roughly almost 5.1%. So that's helping the bonds in the market. So all good news. We do have some volatility in the market, so we'll continue to experience pluses and minuses. But as far as an update on how the reserve fund is, that would be it.
So just as a matter of record, this is just a casual conversation, and we will bring this back and have it on the agenda and go over it in more detail as we are able to validate the information. Yes, Director Novell.
I don't know if my other committee members have a question, but I do. I know that in light of the holidays, we've canceled our second meeting of the month, as I recall. When will we actually see the official results published to the community and available for us to review?
Well, no, we will, when we close the November financials, which will be roughly in the middle of the month, the financials will be posted. We'll present them at the next BNF meeting on January 16th. But when the financial packet is ready, we will have that. It's generally about the middle of the month. So.
And just to clarify my question, Cliff, it was pertaining to the investment account improvements. Is that part of that same package, or will we see that any other?
It is. So we have the financial statements themselves, which 10 or 11 page financial report that we post, as well as the investment activity report that we post. We post all those in the financial package, and
Gotcha.
those will be available about the middle of the month.
Okay, that's good for us
yeah.
all to know, including anybody, any of our other members. Thank you.
Thank you. So let's go ahead and we can begin the agenda now. So I'm going to introduce Kirsten Peterson, and Kirsten is our HR officer, and she is one of the person that's been pushing and primarily responsible for the presentation we're going to have this morning. So good morning, Kirsten.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I am here to help present the benefits renewal package that we have in place for beginning January 1st, 2024. And I am going to have Scott Ragland, who is with Lovitt-Touche, which is part of the Marsh McLennan Group, insurance group, and he's going to present the benefits as we have moved through that process. He will take you through the things that impacted our benefit decisions, as well as some of the changes that we have made. And what I want everyone to know is that we look as a team, both with Lovitt and ourselves, we are very thoughtful when we make any changes, because we do know that it impacts not only our employees, but it also impacts the association and the subsequent fees. So we looked at multiple ways to continue giving our employees the great coverage that we currently have, and while keeping the goal of reducing the costs to the association, which I think you will see we've done very nicely. He'll talk to you about limited providers on the medical aspect, where we have a very diverse group of employees, so there's not always a lot of options available to us. And we'll also talk about our current coverage, things like our dental, vision, AD&D, like disability policies, that all came in with what's called a rate pass, meaning that the current providers that we have right now did not want to engage with any kind of cost-cutting measures, so we put all of those out to market as well. So I would like to introduce Scott. He is the principal at Lovitt-Touche. He heads a great team of people that we have been working with since June, I think is when we started this process. So this was not anything that we did just in the past month. We've been working on plan designs, thoughts, ways to encourage change within our own employee base. And so without further ado, I'd like to introduce Scott Ragland, and he is going to present to you our benefits.
Thanks, Kirsten. Good morning, everyone. Like Kirsten said, my name is Scott Ragland. I'm a principal with Lovitt-Touche. We're a Marsh & McLennan company, and this should be pretty straightforward and shouldn't take too long. But whatever questions you guys have, I'm open to answering anything and everything. So, do I have the clicker? Oh, here it is. Perfect. So I just we have about 10 slides to go through, starting with kind of an overview of our team structure, who Lovitt and MMA is, kind of a refresher on what we did from a renewal standpoint, how we got to the decision to move to Aetna, and a few other things from a financial standpoint. So I figured we'd start with the team structure. So on the left-hand side is really the core team that Sun City West works with on a day in and day out basis. I ultimately have responsibility to make sure that everything that we do is, for the greater good for Sun City West. So ultimate responsibility ends with me, but I have a great team that works day in and day out with both Cliff and Kirsten. Starting with Elle De La Cruz, she is a client executive who kind of is a hybrid between myself from a strategy standpoint and then day-to-day service and support. Hannah Thornburg's the client manager, so she's more of the day-to-day service items, employee questions, open enrollment questions, things like that. She's typically in the office, but open enrollment meetings, she'll usually lead those. Julia Whiteman is strictly in the office. She's a benefit analyst, so she's one of the individuals that would deal with the renewal package and going out to market, collating all the information into a understandable format, and then presenting that to us, which then we present to both Cliff and Kirsten. And then Maureen Wiggum is someone that's, we've been working with you as your broker for the last, 5-6 months or so, but she's someone that's really unique. And I'd love for everyone on the panel here, as well as all employees, to understand what it is that she does. As a claims advocate, if there's any extenuating circumstances from a claim standpoint, she would be someone that could help resolve any major issues, right? So I'm not talking about, we need to see a physician. That's more of like a question for us and figuring out what physician makes the most sense and things like that. This is more of, maybe someone has a baby, and if you've ever, had a child before at a hospital, you might get 5 different bills from 5 different providers, right? She helps to consolidate those, present that to the employee in an understandable format. But she goes above and beyond. I mean, we have instances where we've had to have her submit claims to the Health and Human Services for fraud on behalf of a client, to like a lab for providing labs that weren't actually requested on the front. And so what I want you guys to get from that is, if there's anything that you need from a claim standpoint that's typically outside of what you would typically think from a normal standpoint, please come to us, and Maureen would be able to help you with that. The rest of the folks are really individuals that we don't necessarily expect Cliff or Kristen or your team to know on a day in and day out basis, but we just want you to know that from our size and scope, you have access to a lot of different individuals. So we have an actuarial and underwriting team, which will show you kind of some of the work that they did to come up with your renewal underwriting. Population health and wellness. So if we're trying to put together a health and wellness plan for the employees of Sun City West, that person, Jennifer Dale, would help with that. A publications associate, and Melissa Romero, so she's the one that would develop all the communications for open enrollment, how to best communicate to employees. Are we doing what type of communications campaign, development of the open enrollment meeting notes and things like that. Dr. Monty Maston is our chief medical officer. So depending on what kind of large claims comes through, we'll typically have an annual meeting with him and his team to go through and figure out, why are these claims happening? Is there a better way that we can help facilitate those on behalf of members? Chris Beinecke is our national leader of compliance, and he's actually assigned to Sun City West as your compliance leader. So if you've ever dealt with anything benefits related, there's a ton of compliance that has to go through it. So filing a 5500s, we'll do audits every single year from a compliance standpoint that his team leads. Anything that comes through from the federal government, within a day or two, we'll have updates on a summary form to give you an idea of what those mean and how that impacts Sun City West. Those typically go out to both Kirsten and Cliff. And then Bill Peartree is head of our retirement services. And so if there's ever any need from a 403B standpoint, his team would help with the administration of that. This is more, in general, everything that Lovitt-Touche / Marsh does. We already work with you from a benefits perspective and a commercial insurance standpoint. We've been working with you for a while on those. But if there's ever needs for help with payroll and HRIS systems, human resources consulting, ACA compliance, and then COBRA spending account items. Those are a few of the things that we somewhat help with you right now, but we're typically a one-stop shop. We also do individual insurance for executives and non-executives alike. So if you ever need help with home and auto policies and things like that, we do have individuals that do that as well. The majority and the bigger cost items that we help you with right now are the commercial insurance and the benefits. So who is Lovitt-Touche? So Lovitt-Touche has been in Arizona for over 100 years. Charlie Touche just stepped down as our CEO and became our kind of CEO emeritus, right? So he's the head of our board, but the company's been around for a very long time. Jody Sarche, who hired me, has been with the company for 27 years. She just stepped in as the CEO. We're family run. We still have a couple of Touches that work for us, right? But we were purchased by Marsh & McLennan about 5 years ago. If you've heard the name Marsh, Mercer, or McLennan, then you know that it's technically the largest insurance broker in the world. But Marsh & McLennan was kind of developed to be a mid-market arm of Marsh & Mercer. And so what's the neat thing about how we're structured is that we still run and operate as Lovitt-Touche locally, and we still have that look and feel of the local brokerage. But you, as Sun City West, get access to some resources that are typically not meant for companies with a few hundred employees. So it's a nice, unique setup to where you get access to things that are typically meant for much larger organizations, but without losing that personal touch of a local brokerage. So strategic areas of focus from a benefits standpoint, these are the main areas that we typically look at. We're not limited to this, but these are the areas from a cost and health management standpoint that we're typically looking for. Funding methods. So right now you guys are in this kind of hybrid fully insured product. For all intents and purposes, you are fully insured. There's no risk of you having larger claims and having to pay more than what you're budgeting for. Without getting into too much detail, you are in this kind of hybrid product where it's written on what they call self-funded paper, but mainly that's done to eliminate taxes associated with your healthcare plan, which I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but on a fully insured basis, you typically pay 5 or 6% in fully insured premium taxes to help fund healthcare reform. The contract that you're on with Aetna does a good job of eliminating those taxes, but without increasing any risk that you would have, right? So for all intents and purposes, you're fully insured, but it's written on what's called a level funded chassis, which means you eliminate those taxes. So these are things that we're constantly looking at on your guys' behalf. Longer term, if Sun City West continues to grow from an employee count standpoint, we would look a little bit further at partially self-funding. That's something that we would kind of walk hand in hand with you guys on, but there's probably a timing issue with that depending on the growth of the organization. Employee communications is a big piece of what we do. So how you communicate benefits to employees, both at open enrollment and throughout the year. We're constantly trying to figure out ways to communicate to employees both how to use the plan and who to ask questions, right? Because most people are not benefits experts, and so they need some hand-holding along the way. And so we kind of help that process either at open enrollment when we do like one-on-one meetings or have question and answer times for individuals and members, or throughout the year. Contribution strategy is a big piece, right? So you have the overall cost of the plan, but then we need to figure out the best way to pay for a portion of that to eliminate some of the costs from an employee standpoint, but also direct them to which plans are going to make the most sense for them to utilize. We don't want to pay for a plan that, disincentivizes them to make the right decisions about their healthcare. So you'll see in a little bit, we set up the contribution structure to make it beneficial for employees to use certain types of plans. Vendor management. So a vendor could be any carrier or solution that you guys work with right now, ranging from medical, dental, vision, life and disability, FSA, COBRA. So we help manage those relationships in a more cohesive manner to where you guys have kind of one person to go to or one team to go to, and our team to help manage those questions. And then plan design. So we have access to one of the largest benchmarking libraries in the world. So every single year, we're looking at peers of yours in the West Valley, but then also nationally, give you an idea of what other companies are doing from a plan design standpoint to remain competitive, what those costs of plans are, anything from co-pays to deductibles to out-of-pocket maximums, to give us an idea of what others are doing in your peer view, so we can make recommendations that are actually making an impact for the individuals that you're trying to hire. Any questions so far? Okay. So from a trend standpoint, there's a few trends in 2023 moving into 2024. One being obviously a shifting workforce. So employees are are placing a higher premium on finding meaningful purpose at their work. So, obviously salary is a big piece of it, but people are trying to find meaning in their work, meaning that, what is the end result of their job, right? Are they having an impact? Are they doing good, right? It's not just about money nowadays, although it is a big piece of it. Empathy is has been a key driver for employees. They want to feel a part of something. I think that Sun City West has done a really good job of making this feel very family oriented, right? And so you've done a good job of that, but there's different things that we can do to offer, low cost, high cost, or no cost options from a benefit standpoint to help bring that forward too. Mental health has been massive. So especially since COVID, I'm sure everyone in this room has had some form of issue with behavioral health or family members with issues with behavioral health. And so there's been a big drive towards providing those behavioral health benefits to employees. You're lucky that you have a really good insurance carrier, both before with Cigna and then moving forward with Aetna, to where they have some pretty nice in-house behavioral health products that they provide at no cost, right? So going through the Aetna website, all your employees have access to behavioral health specialists to get help, and then there's also some EAP type services, to help with employees with major behavioral health issues. And then there's a pretty decent change in healthcare economics as well. So inflation has been something that's obviously been in front of mind for most individuals. Cost of goods, and healthcare is not one to change. Luckily, healthcare has always been had a decent amount of trend year in and year out, somewhere between 5% and 7% on average. That hasn't changed too much with the advent of ACA as well as COVID, and so it's remained relatively flat at that 5.6% to 7% or so. But obviously, with the increase in cost and out too much of an increase in employee salary, it's becoming more and more difficult for employees to purchase healthcare. So one of our major goals is obviously to keep costs down. So inflation outpaces trend, like I just mentioned before. Surprisingly enough, healthcare trend, regardless of what you've seen in the news, is actually a little bit lower than what we've seen from an overall inflation standpoint nationally. So 2023 average of total health benefit cost per employee is about 7%. The 2022 average in prescription drug was about 6.4%. The 12-month consumer price index as of March is 2023, obviously at 5%, that's an average, but depending on what individuals are buying, it can be quite a bit higher than that. And then average compensation increase of about 5.1% in 2022. Unemployment, that doesn't have too much to do with this, but at 3.5%. So you can see they're pretty much online with each other, inflation and of both consumer goods as well as healthcare. We're going to send this presentation out to you if it hasn't already been sent out as well. It's a little bit harder to read because of the size, but this gives us an idea of the total cost of the plans combined over the rolling 12 months. Rolling 12 months is basically the last 12 months starting from the date that we have claims. So this goes back to June. Usually there's about a month or two in lag before we get claims sent to us, which is why we don't have claims through October right now. We're waiting on those claims to come through. But this should give you a decent idea as to what's going on with your plan. So starting from left to right, we have the total number of employees that changes obviously each month depending on who's enrolled in the plan. The medical claims, which obviously changes dependent on the utilization. The pharmacy claims. Capitation, I don't want to go too much detail on this, but basically what capitation is the biggest portion of it is like chiropractic care. It's kind of like an old HMO model to where you pay just a per employee per month for utilization in a chiropractic care, and regardless if it's more or less, that's what you pay. So they kind of cap the rate at that amount. As you can see, in the grand scheme of things, it's not that much, so I don't go into too much detail on it, but it's about $1,400 a month. That gets us to the total claims. The next portion is pretty important. This claims over the pooling point. So what a pooling point is it's third-party insurance that says any one individual member that has a claim, sickness or accident, they're not going to pay, the insurance that your plan is not going to pay more than X amount. And your pooling point, I think, is about $100,000. So once a claim hits $100,000, anything above that is covered by a third-party insurance. It'd be very similar if you were on a self-funded plan, but this is obviously all bundled in with Cigna and then moving into Aetna. So you'll see any of those amounts over the pooling point are pulled out from your calculation. But you can see you've had some pretty large claims. So, large claims in the last 12 months equate to a little over $1 million, and that's just above the pooling point. So carriers are going to take that into account, obviously, when they're projecting out your renewal. But if we look at once we take that out, the current policy year, you're running at about 73%, and the rolling 12 months, you're running at about 90%. Now that would, you would look at that and say your loss ratio for every dollar you spend in premium, you're going to spend 90 cents in claims. In that scenario, you'd think that the carrier is making money, but you got to take into account those claims over the pooling point because they're usually insuring that themselves. And so technically you're $1 million over what they expected you to pay. But from a negotiating standpoint, we try and leverage that to say the reason it's called a pooling point is because they pool it with all the other clients that they have. And they really shouldn't rate you based off of how one company runs. They need to run it as the pool runs, okay? And so just because you ran $1 million over, our argument with your carrier would say, well, this is a pooled product. You need to take that into account when rating them, right? Does that make sense? I know this isn't something you guys do in a day out, but it's pretty straightforward once you get your head wrapped around it. And then the next few items just kind of give you an idea of the total cost per employee per month. That's what that PEPM stands for. And then the accrual PEPM, accrual is basically interchanged with a budget. That's your budget. And your budget really only changes based off of how many enrolled employees you have, because your budget remains pretty flat. It's just how many employees you have will dictate if it goes up or down. And then on the right-hand side, it gives us an idea of how much ER stands for employer, so that'd be Sun City West, how much Sun City West pays, and then EE is the employee, and that's how much the employee pays. Okay, a lot of numbers here again. The gist of this is our actuary team every single year on behalf of our clients will come up with a renewal calculation. So the way that we use this is we try and make this relatively conservative or aggressive, depending on what kind of story we want to tell the carrier that you guys are with. But your initial increase came in, I think it's on the next slide, around like 20% or so. And so we put this together and said, okay, 14.2% on that bottom right, based off of the last 24 months of claims data, would probably be in a conservative basis, would be a pretty fair renewal. And so we run through all this, both paid medical claims, pharmacy claims. We take out, if you see on that fifth line, we take out large claims above the 100K pooling point, or ISL, that's what that pooling point stands for. That gets us to net medical paid claims, and then so on. There's trend associated with that at that annual trend rate of 6%. We look at different time frames. So we look at January 21 through December 21, January 22 through December 22, and then January 23 through June 23, and then we weight those. Obviously, the weight is less from years, 2 or 3 years ago, because 2 or 3 years ago, claims don't have as much of an impact on what's going to happen today. So you can see there's a rating of 40% weight on the most current claims, 50% on the middle, and 10% on the beginning. All that comes together and gets us to what we would project from a renewal if you were to be very conservative of 14.2%. So if your renewal came in at 2%, we would say you have a very good renewal comparatively. If it came in at 20%, we would say that's not a very good renewal. So let's go through and kind of see where we ended up. So from a renewal standpoint, initially Cigna came in at 23%, keeping all plans the same. After about 7 times back and forth with them. This is kind of a game that carriers tend to play. They'll come in at 23%. They think that's fair. We tell them it's not, and then they came in at like 16%. And then we say, we're going to have to go out to bid to other carriers. Then they'll give us what's called a no bid option, meaning if we accept this number, then we agree not to go out to bid. And I think that number was like 13% or 14% or something like that. And we came to the conclusion that we felt like we needed to go and look at a different partner just in case to see what else was out there. So we went to all the major carriers, Blue Cross, United, and Aetna. Aetna ended up coming back with the most competitive at 5% without changing any of the plan designs. There was also an additional $32,000 transition credit, $10,000 wellness credit, and then a $10,000 implementation credit. Those, for lack of a better word, you could really use those for just about anything, right? So we included that in addition to the savings compared to Cigna as the overall package. Cigna ended up coming in last minute at about 9.6%. So it was a relatively decent renewal. A couple other factors that we wanted to take into account was that Aetna, you guys are really in Banner country right now, and I'm not sure if you know, but Banner and Aetna have an arrangement with each other where technically Aetna in Arizona is called Banner Aetna. And so they have these limited networks where if you access Banner facilities, you get a reduced rate. And so around here, you have a huge impact with Banner. And so we felt like the claims impact by moving to the Banner Aetna network was going to be a lot better than what you had with Cigna. And I feel like one of the issues that you've had long-term with Cigna is that you have these really large claims, but if you were to have the right network in place with the Banner facilities, I think those claims are going to be reduced quite a bit, which is why I think long-term you're going to see a reduction in claims liability with the move to Aetna. And then your fixed liability is obviously quite a bit less at the 5% compared to the 9.68%, which was the final renewal offer from Cigna. So we decided to move forward with Aetna into the new plan year starting January 1. This is an idea of what the final contributions look like from an employee and employer standpoint. So on the left-hand side, we have the enrollment in each plan. We have the plans themselves, the performance The PERF, that stands for performance. 2500 is the limited network, so that's the Banner Aetna network. The Aetna Broad network is the network that you can go to basically any physician with inside the Aetna plan, and then the HDHP, which is the high deductible health plan. We have the employee contributions on the right there. So starting from the performance plan at 144 and then going down to that HDHP, you can kind of follow that pretty closely. The average employee contribution is about 15% of the total cost of the plan, whereas Sun City West takes about 85%. And that's a really good ratio compared to what we're seeing what most competitors of yours doing. Typically, on average, you see maybe 100% paid for employee only, but only 50% paid for family. And families are really the one that has the largest impact on getting individuals to stay longer term based off of their benefits. So then on the right-hand side, you can see what the employee difference is per pay period to what they're paying now. So it's 5% differential. For the performance plan at $2,500, an employee only is paying about $3.43 more per pay period, about $29 more per pay period for the broad $2,500. And then for the $3,200 HDHP, they're paying about $3.20 more. And then so on, depending on which plan they're in and what, if they're employee, spouse, family, or child. And then this is the renewal from the life and disability standpoint and dental and vision. So you were with MetLife for the majority of these products, and you can see on the left-hand side what Kirsten was alluding to earlier. They basically gave you a flat renewal, but that didn't take into account changes in demographics and some of the risk factors that you guys had, which actually went down. So you can see on the right-hand side, we made the decision to move to Mutual of Omaha, which across the board was less expensive in every line of coverage. In addition to that, we were able to add a new plan through Mutual of Omaha, which was employee paid short-term disability. And the total cost comparatively is still about $9,000 less than what you were paying the year before, with the addition of a $43,000 new product. And short-term disability is something that really gets a lot. Long-term disability is probably more important for employees in terms of taking care of them. Obviously, long-term, they don't think of it that way, but if someone, gets hit by a truck and they can't work for the next 40 years, like long-term disability is going to be way more important than the short-term disability. But most members think of things in short-term basis, and short-term disability is typically something that they think of as being more important, whether it's through pregnancy or sickness or illness or whatever it might be. So it's a really nice product to give, and not every company does that. So I was really happy that you guys were able to add this and reduce your overall expenditure. And that's it. Pretty straightforward, but I know there's a lot of moving pieces. Does anyone have any questions for me?
I'd like to make a few comments. Thank you very much. This has been very helpful. You lost me a couple times on your tracking on the stats, but I think I was able to recover. I would say that historically, that last year we were not happy with the presentation that we received. I don't remember the exact increase. I think it was 30 to 34%. You remember, Kirsten? Was it 34%? 34%. When we presented that back to the person that you are today, from the other company, it was basically a shrug of the shoulders and, basically is, oh, well, that's too bad. That's just the way life goes. I think a lot is to be attributed to Kirsten for her persistence to move forward and to try to get some change and some movement. No one on the committee was happy last year with that. I think the jury's still out here. This looks very good to me, but I'm one person. But compared to what we had last year, compared to where we are today, I think we're miles ahead of ourselves. So I'm going to open it up to the committee for discussion, but I wanted to just kind of make that statement about the movement from year to year and to attribute much of that movement to Kirsten and her efforts. So and I open this to the committee now, so if anyone would like to comment. Yes, Committee Member Kellis.
First off, I just want to make a comment that I think 85% for the family premiums is really good. I know that we're not known to be the highest paid employer around here, and that package does tend to bring in more people when you got some coverage for their family and the long-term care. Wonderful. Everybody should have it. I'm very happy to see that included. I did have a question as regard to how you estimated your projected increase. I think I got some of those answers a little further in the back, but I'm wondering if you use any kind of indexing or where you get that from.
Are you talking about, let's see,
Slide 7?
this one?
No, back.
Sorry,
Well,
this one?
I think that detailed it a little more. Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can see on the right-hand side, it's a formula, right? And so
Yes.
every carrier has their own formula, and we basically have, we have access to each carrier and how they calculate things. So some carriers might just look at the rolling 12 months. So you see that basically, July of 22 to June of 23, a lot of them will say that's 100%. We're going to do the rolling 12 months and we're going to base your renewal off of that. Some carriers look at it that way. Aetna and Cigna actually base it off of this, where it's a weighted average depending on kind of how many claims you have in specific periods, and those periods are up on the top there. But the way that it's calculated is really everything is on here. So, I mean, do you want me to go through it in a little bit more detail?
No, that's fine.
Yeah, if you look at this one and read through, I know sometimes you have to be an underwriter to look at this stuff, but it's pretty straightforward. I mean, if you look at, you have paid claims, medical claims, pharmacy claims, they take out those large claims above the amount that we talked about, the pooling point.
Yeah.
They actually add those back in. It's more of a formula than anything.
And then just the last question actually was regarding pooling. You mentioned that we're a little higher pooling rate than other areas. Do you think that has to do with us being an adult community, or?
Probably, yeah. You have, we tried to do something about this year, but you have more individuals. You probably have 5 times more individuals that are eligible for Medicare than a normal organization. And I think that obviously has to do with where you are and what you do for a living, or what the members do for a living. So we had a group come out this year to present Medicare options, and it really is like, if we can get your guys' help to communicate that to individuals that are Medicare eligible, that are still on the benefits, like, it's a win-win for them and for the organization, right? It's just, sometimes people don't want to hear that. They've done what they've done in the past and they don't want to make changes. But if we can get those to change, then typically that's going to have a pretty large impact on the pooling charges.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Miller?
So thank you for your presentation. It was very well done. And thank you, Kristen, for pushing the issue. So maybe this is a silly question, but 5%, this sounds like a really good deal, okay? And not being particularly familiar with the insurance market, or that, is this basically a loss leader for them just to poach a client from one company to the next?
It can be. I don't think it is with you, because I think because of that Banner Aetna relationship, for every dollar in claims that you guys had last year, because of the Banner Aetna relationship, those claims should be closer to 80 cents. If they use these facilities, and we're incentivizing your members to use those facilities, so I'm hoping that will be the case. If that's not the case, then yes, it'll be a loss leader, and we'll be in a similar situation that we were in this year with a higher increase. But we have a large enough relationship with most of the carriers to where usually we're able to call in some favors when things aren't running well. And I think this is an example of one of them. Like, you probably should have renewed closer to 14%. I think it's a win at 5%, but I also think there's an upside there for them. And if it ends up not being that way, then we're going to be in a similar situation. We're going to have to continue to do this every single year. But my hope is, and there's a lot of companies that don't have hope in this type of situation, that the claims are going to be quite a bit lower next year.
So do we have data of what facilities people are using in the past?
Yeah, in aggregate.
Yeah.
And they're using all the facilities around here. So they're using most of the Banner facilities, but Cigna doesn't have as great of a discount with those facilities as Aetna does.
Okay.
Or they're using them even out of network.
Okay, so by shopping around, we really gained a significant advantage.
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And one other thing, because I got to imagine, hopefully we're doing this with you guys every single year. We're having this conversation. Is one of the things I've talked to Kirsten about this is, you don't want to be in a position where you're going out to market every single year. Sometimes you have to. Like if you're getting a 30% increase, we're going to have to market it every single year. I don't care what the consequences are, because it's going to be better off going out to market than not. But if we're getting a 5% increase and we're going out to market every single year, those carriers are going to start noticing that recreation centers of Sun City West are coming out every single year, and they're going to be less likely to provide bids, right? So if we have a great year this year and we get a decent renewal, we should probably take it. But if we come in anywhere above 10%, more than likely I'm going to recommend marketing it, and I think that's going to outweigh the downside of having other carriers notice that we're marketing every year. So we're going to do what's best, but we'll have that conversation with Cliff and Kirsten and make an informed decision.
Mr. Bernardo.
Thank you, Dick. Thank you for a great presentation. It's pretty clear you've done this before, and I have no doubt you know what you're talking about. The question that I have, our claims history, how much is it affecting our renewal rates, if at all?
Almost entirely. Yeah. So this, like, I can't remember the percentage, but you're probably about 90% experience rated, which means 90% of your rate is based off of your experience. 10% is manual, meaning it's based off of like your industry and demographics and stuff like that. So you are at a size where almost the entirety of it is based off of your claims history. Your claims history hasn't been great, which is why, but that's why I'm hoping that this changed Aetna is going to change that.
The other question, from what I'm seeing, your company is not brokering our workman's comp insurance. Is that correct?
We are, right?
You are.
Yeah, no, we are. I don't do that. Brian Wilder in my office is the contact on the commercial insurance. So yeah.
Okay. So you couldn't answer the question what our claims history has been with workman's comp in the past 12 months, can you?
I cannot.
We have a workman's comp presentation scheduled. Do you recall, Kirsten, when it is? I think it's in January or early February. Okay, so we will go through that in depth, Frank.
That's it. Thank you.
Welcome.
Mr. Bosak?
My recollection from last year's conversation was the 34% was pretty much driven by 3 particularly large claims, and I think that's what they hung their hat on. So we have a reference and a feeling for what you're talking about. But I also heard you talk about a ceiling and then the difference. Can you just elaborate a little bit more on that so we don't run into that same kind of situation again?
Yeah, so you have what's called a pooling point or an individual stop loss, which is when you're truly self-funded. That amount is $100,000. So any member, employee, family member, it doesn't matter. Everyone has this deductible of $100,000, right? And so the plan will pay up to that $100,000 for every individual. And then once you hit $100,000, there's the third-party insurance that comes in that pays for that and takes it off. So you saw that in the last 12 months, you've had over $1 million over that $100,000 for individuals, right? So that's kind of taken off and put into this bucket of a pooled product, which is why it's called a pooling point. And so that's kind of the nuances of the negotiation, because if you have an individual on there with cancer that's going to account for $750,000 in claims every single year, they're going to say this is a loss for us. Our argument would be, well, this is part of a greater pool, so you can't expect us to pay for the entirety of this amount because you have third-party insurance, and I all but guarantee you that third-party insurance is profitable. So again, this is kind of the nuances of going through a negotiation with them. So yeah, if you have 3 claims that are ongoing that are massive claims, it's going to have a pretty negative impact on your rate. Our argument is going to be that those 3 individuals need to be rated outside of your plan in a separate type of format. And a lot of times what happens too is that if you have a large claim that maybe took place for $750,000 as an example, but then in the next 12 months, we know it's not going to be that much. A new carrier, typically like an Aetna, will be more willing to rate that at a lower amount, whereas the previous carrier is going to want to recoup the money that they lost. So there's all these nuances inside that.
My major takeaway from what you said is you've gotten to the point where Sun City West is kind of being treated differently than maybe we would be traditionally by other competitors of yours.
Yeah, a lot of times these are questions that don't get asked, and it's an uncomfortable conversation to have. But yeah, yes, in short, yeah, you're right.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Ms. Callis?
I was just wondering, with the long-term insurance, especially with the explanation you just gave, like cancer and those things that are carry on, does the long-term insurance kick in at like 6 months, or when does that take effect?
Do we know what the wait period is? Is it 6 months? Yeah, because it dovetails with the short-term disability. So I think the short-term is like a 2-week wait period and a 14-week, and then once that's over, the long-term disability takes over.
Okay, and does that somehow impact our rates once they go on long-term?
No, long-term disability and life insurance have such few utilization markers. It's like for every 1,000 employees, you get like one person that typically takes long-term disability or uses long-term disability. So it's what's called manual rated. So they'll take your industry demographics, average age, and that's how they rate it. It typically doesn't impact. You could have 5 people that go on long-term. That shouldn't impact your rate. Short-term disability, on the other hand, that is experience rated at your size, because the claims happen more often and they're easier to track because they're short amounts, right? Hence the short-term disability. So if you have 10 claims on short-term disability, we could probably expect an increase in those rates.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Mr. Bosak? Yeah.
Kristen, I'm anxious to hear you talk about, how you communicate these kinds of changes to the associates, and then what their reaction has been, and what kind of impact is it having on our retention, the things that you brought, because my sense is that it's been pretty decent, but I'm not sure what that is.
It has. So one of the things that I take to heart very seriously is making sure that our employees get the information and have that educational piece. So to that end, this year we brought in the vendors that are new to us and had them go through a presentation much like this here. They were able to ask questions. We could talk about specific instances. They were available after the meetings so that they could ask specifically what those kind of impacts would be, or ongoing. I have a family that has some ongoing medical concerns, and they have to be sure that they've got a particular provider. And so I was able to connect them with Hannah. Hannah spent several emails and several phone calls with that particular family, and that ensured that the family could make the proper choice for their family member and ensure that they got the right provider and in the right bucket, or choosing the right plan for their needs. So the other thing that we have with this particular group is that we went from a 2.5-page handout of benefits and information, and we now have full-time benefits and part-time benefits, and there's different books, and they're about 55 pages. So it literally details every single aspect of those benefit plans so that people can look and make a qualified decision that will help them. When we did the plan design, I think Scott spoke to this, we looked at what we currently had, which was an 85-15 split on the cost. We made one of the plans, the higher plan, an 80-20 plan, or 80-20 split, so that because we were enthusiastically excited about, I guess would be the term, of the vendors and the providers that are in the mid-level plan, we're hoping to see a drive of some of the people that were on the higher cost plan move down to the mid-level plan, so that it decreases the employees' cost and the cost to have their family members on that plan. So we'll know more. Our plan ends at the end of this, or our open enrollment period ends at the end of this week, so we'll have a better idea of what drove and what movements were made within the plans. As far as the benefits themselves, what we know is that benefits are a huge driving factor for new employees. And when they look at and they have an opportunity to work with us or a neighboring community or neighboring employment, we like to be able to spell out exactly what our benefit package is. And it is a rich plan, and it's designed so that we can keep our employees engaged. We can keep them from not having to worry about whether they can afford this plan or not. And it keeps our retention rate quite high. Our turnover rate is about 22% as of the end of August, and I know the state of Arizona and neighboring communities are hovering right at 45 to 50% turnover. So our turnover rate is quite low. I've been here just a little over a year. I haven't had anyone come to me and say, I'm leaving because of the benefits. So, and quite the opposite. It's when we've presented an offer letter to a new employee, they're quite keen that these benefits and the whole package of benefit offerings are attractive. And I think too, to Scott's point, he talked about mental wellness and things that are impacting us that probably didn't impact us when I first started in HR. There wasn't conversation about mental health and things that we've kind of worked through, COVID as an example, or seeing family members in distress. So we have this robust group of people that can speak directly to our employees. They can pick up the phone, it's anonymous, they can have conversations. I am struggling, I don't think I can do this, or I don't know how to financially make this work, and they've got financial planners through the employee assistance program. So there's all kinds of things that kind of put our arms around for each employee, and then each employee gets to choose what makes best sense for them.
You've obviously upticked the activity in our community, thanks.
Yes, correct.
Do we have other questions from the committee? If not, I am going to ask, provide an opportunity for the audience and anyone that may be on YouTube. So there really is no vote here. This is purely an informational session, so there will be no action for us. But I think it's important that we provide, there'll be no recommendation, that we provide an opportunity for those in this room, and also if we have anyone on YouTube to question Scott or Kirsten or anyone else. So at that, I open the floor.
Jolene Pajaskowski, 132268. Has RCSCW always had 85% coverage?
No, we just went to that 2 years ago. It was an incentive to help attract and retain employees.
Okay. What is the standard?
There is no standard. I think it's probably whatever the organization wants to offer as an incentive. We see 80-20 a lot.
Right, that's what.
You can go back and historically, and you can probably find a plethora of combinations, but we find this one to be one that would be attractive, and it has been.
Okay.
So.
And again, we did adjust the plan document this year so that we are looking at opportunities for people to choose a different plan and share more burden of the cost. So again, at the higher plan, we moved it to an 80-20, and in an effort to have those conversations with our employees so that they could decide if they needed to have that broader plan, or if, because the providers are so well entrenched in the valley, if the Performance Network would meet their needs.
Do we have anyone else in the room that wishes to ask? Christine, do we have anyone on YouTube?
We do. I'm going to start with Mystical Michelle, 127597. Great presentation, well prepared, explained. Thank you. We had the same member, 127597, asks you to consider taking a few moments to identify the committee members present, the Budget and Finance Committee members. We could do that at the end if you wish.
I'll do it right now. To my far right is Lynn Kellis. Lynn is her first year on the committee. And next to her is Gary Bosak. Mr. Bosak has been on the committee for 2 or 3 years. Next to Mr. Bosak is David Miller. David is his second year on the committee. Next to me, to my right, is Ray Davis. Ray's first year on the committee. To my left is Christine Novello. Christine is also a governing board director, and this is her second year on the committee. Mr. Dwayne Parsons. This is Dwayne's first year on the committee. Next is Mr. Bagnato, and this is his second year on the committee. And then our advisor is Cliff Swan, and Cliff has been with us for the duration. So, oh, and my name is Dick Rhodes. I'm also the chairman and a governing board director on the committee. Do we have anything else, Christine? Okay, since there is no action to that, I thank Scott, and I think he has done a tremendous job for us. I can't tell you how thrilled I am for this. I heard about this about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I've been excited to hear the formal presentation. Relative to what we saw last year, we are light years ahead of what we were facing. So, Kirsten, I take my hat off to you and your staff, because I know that you had other people helping you with this. I think you've done a remarkable job on this. So thank you very much. We're going to proceed with our agenda. One of the important housekeeping things that we as a Budget and Finance Committee have to do is to review our policies. And we review them every year, and we take great care and diligence to review them. So we have 6 that we're going to present today. Each committee member has been assigned responsibility for particular ones, and so we're going to go through it one at a time, and then we will make a recommendation on each one. Okay? So the first one is going to be Governing Board Director Christine Novello. She is going to report on FI03, Property Owners Changes and Refunds of Member Dues and Fees.
Thank you, Chairman Rhodes. I've reviewed the FI03, and we made a few changes to FI03 last year. I'm satisfied with the current state of policy FI03, and I recommend no changes to that policy at this time.
Okay.
Shall I proceed? Or?
Yes. We need to deal with each one of them individually. So I think what we could probably do is to deal with your 2. We'll do a recommendation on those 2, and then we'll go to the next because they're in increments of 2. So Christine, if you would proceed with policy FI05.
FI05, the insurance policy. I've reviewed that policy and am satisfied with the current state of that policy as was revised in 2022. I recommend no changes to that policy at this time.
Okay, so we're going to ask for comments on these 2 right now before we take a vote on those. Are there any comments or questions in-house or on YouTube? Okay, if not, would you restate your recommendation, Christine?
Certainly. I've reviewed policy FI03, property owner changes and refunds of member dues and fees. I'm satisfied with the current state of the policy and recommend no changes at this time.
Okay, we're going to start with Committee Member Kellis. Yes will be to support the no change. No is that
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Okay, unanimous. And if we'd go through the same thing with FI05?
I've reviewed policy FI05, the insurance policy, and I'm satisfied with the current state of that policy. I recommend no changes to policy FI05 at this time.
Mr. Bignato?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, that is also unanimous. Okay, now we're going to go to Mr. Parsons, and he has FI13 collection policy and FI17 asset preservation fee. Dwayne?
Yes, so I reviewed FI 13 collection policy thoroughly and found no need to change it, so I'm recommending no changes on that one. I also reviewed FI 17 asset preservation fee and found that to be adequate and recommend no changes. And FI 13 was last reviewed in January of 2023, and FI 17 was reviewed in 2021.
Okay, do we have anyone in-house that would like to speak to this? Do we have anyone online, Christine?
No comments online.
Okay, we're going to start with Ms. Kellis again.
Yes.
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 Again, unanimous. FI 17. Actually, I think you should make the recommendation technically. Dwayne?
Excuse me. I recommend no changes to FI 13, which we just voted on, and I also recommend no changes needed on FI 17 asset preservation.
Okay, we're voting on FI 17 right now because we've already done FI 13. Okay, so Mr. Bignato?
Yes.
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 Unanimous.
As a point of clarification, Chairman Rhodes, this is not a vote, it's a recommendation, am I
It is a
correct?
it is a recommendation. You're absolutely right. Thank you. We make recommendations to the governing board. The governing board has the final authoritative sources on that. Okay, the next is Mr. Bosak, FI04, Reserve Fund Policy, and FI 16, Reporting Financial Performance to the Governing Board.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Bosak?
Reserve fund policy was last reviewed in October of 2020. I met with Cliff and Terry and Pete just to make certain that we weren't taking anything for granted with this. We scorched through it almost line by line and agreed that it was exactly what should be preserved. And so therefore recommend that FI04 remain as is. Reporting financial performance to the governing board, FI16, is about 6 lines and probably the shortest. Thank you for giving me that one. It simply states when the financial reports should be communicated back to the governing board, and they're every quarter. And this memorializes those particular responsibilities, and there's no reason to change them. So I recommend that we accept it as reviewed.
Okay, any comments from the committee? Okay, any comments from anyone in-house? Is there anyone on YouTube, Christine?
No comments online?
Okay, Mr. Bosak, would you frame a recommendation for us?
I recommend that we accept FI04 as currently written.
Mr. Bignato?
Yes.
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 Okay, would you proceed to FI
I
16?
recommend FI16 be retained as is.
Okay, Ms. Kellis?
Yes.
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 Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, unanimous. I apologize for the monotony of that, but it was necessary that we go through that exercise to ensure that everyone has had an opportunity to listen to the any proposed revisions, which there were not, because we did go through a deep dive last year. And we will be forwarding this to our recommendation to the governing board. Okay, so thank you very much. We have one more item left on our agenda under our new business. And this is an item that Mr. Bignato has surfaced. He actually talked about it maybe, Frank, 3 months ago, 2 months ago. And it was kind of overtaken by priorities. We had to bounce it and reschedule it and all that. But I promised Frank that we would put this on the agenda. So I'm not going to make any more comments about it, but I am going to turn the discussion over to Mr. Bignato so you can explain your position on this and what you wish to have done. Okay? So Frank, it's to you, please.
Thank you for that, Dick. This is a concept that's so simple that it didn't even require a blinding slideshow. A few months ago, late August, early September, I received a paper invoice in the mail for my annual dues. My wife also received a paper invoice in the mail for her annual dues, and we each also received an email. I don't know why I'd never noticed this before. Maybe it's gone on for years. I can't explain that, but I sat back and I thought to myself, given the cost of postage, given the cost of the paper and the printing, some manual input from an employee somewhere, I wonder how much it's costing this community to duplicate something and not have the ability for residents to opt out. I get almost no bills at home anymore. Everything comes electronically. Most of the mail I get every day is junk and goes right in the trash. Never see an invoice from anyone because they allowed me to opt out. There are some really intelligent people in this community, regardless of their age, that are capable of making that decision on their own. I did ask Cliff at one time if he could come up with a ballpark figure for about what it costs the community to mail out invoices to everybody, and sometimes 2 per household. And if I remember correctly, Cliff told me there was about $20,000 worth of expense. I get it. In the grand scheme of things, $20,000 of expense is not a very large sum in a community that has $28–30 million in revenue. But if there's even 3/4 of that expense can be saved by allowing residents to opt out, and I truly believe at least 75% of residents will choose to do away with the paper invoice, we could potentially looking to be saving anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000. I can't imagine that we're so proud of ourselves that we don't need to grasp at every opportunity we can to save money. And what I'd like to happen today is for this committee, if we wish to discuss this further, we can go ahead, but I think that it would be something that we would recommend to the board to consider as implementing in part of living here in Sun City West, and you'll no longer get paper invoices unless you want to. We'll never do away with them, but we'll be able to do away with a lot of them. Thank you.
Could I ask you a question, Frank? To me, this sounds like a business process. You know, I'm not sure what we're going to do. To say that we're going to send a recommendation to the governing board, we're a policy board. You know, we don't do the, as Christine would say, we don't do the how. You know, to me, this is operational. I'm not sure what we're going to do with it. I don't think it's appropriate to send it to the governing board. There's no policy, it's an issue, so Christine, would you?
I'm sorry, if I may. I understand that completely, but since I'm always harping on that as a governing board and the standing committees talk about what and not how. But there are several things that we discuss as a course of business that we would frame as a what, not a how. And I understand what you're saying, but the more I was thinking about this matter that before us today in advance, I believe that it is in our purview if we chose as a committee to say this is a feature of living here that we would like to offer to our residents. That feature being online, the ability to opt out and so forth. And we don't discuss how to do it and not even when, but rather this is something that we wish to pass along to our operations team since it has not been a possibility to this point. And so that's one. I think that that it is in our capability to make the recommendation if we choose. I think it's a really good idea for the future. However, going back again to the first time you brought this up, and again, another really great observation that you've made, if I may say, Frank, right? Small things add up to big wins in the end, right? So, and this may not be something that we choose to do, but thank you for bringing it up. As I recall, there's likely to be some expense for implementing this initially, right? We have some limited capabilities for our technology. There's going to be some expense in the short run, but there could be a long-term benefit, right? But we won't know that until we ask our operations team to look into it. So long story there is, I believe we could, if we chose, frame a recommendation recommending that we offer this as a future capability.
So my question is, where does micromanagement begin and policy ends? My personal perspective is this is a business process. What I would say, and I would look to Cliff, and I would say, Cliff, we have a suggestion for you from your operational perspective. We think that you should do this, but I think to ask you to do what in essence is a business practice exceeds the scope of the Budget and Finance Committee. Would you care to comment on why you're doing what you're doing? Cliff?
Sure.
Yes, not you, Frank. We know what you're doing.
No, yeah. So there's the what, the how, and the why, right? So I spent some time researching this with the team, specifically membership and IT, because this is kind of like an IT function. We do have the capability to opt out. In fact, we offered it a few years ago when the opportunity came up. And at that time, it proved to be quite the struggle because the information in the system is only as good as how updated it is, how reliable it is, and a lot of things change. So, for example, if you're a member and you have an email on file, we have to have a specific email for each member. So we bill our assessments by member, not by rooftop. So that complicates things. For example, you may think that you have an email on file because your spouse has an email on file. So your spouse receives or is able to opt out, but the member thinks that they're opted out, and then they never receive a statement or receive anything because there's no specific email for them. So that's one hurdle we had. The other hurdle we had is people change their credentials. It's a very fluid thing, right? Having an email address. Now, everybody personally has their own email address and can make their decision on how they change it, but it does change at times. And the last thing someone thinks of is to contact the association and say, hey, I changed my email address. I need you to go in and change it in the system. All of our contact and all of our relationships are built with our members face to face. We're not an online platform. People don't sign up to be members at the rec centers of Sun City West electronically. They're physically here. We have a handshake. We create that relationship face to face. So it's not like we're an online subscription where to even sign up, you have to put your email address in and get your proper credentials and, actively manage your account on the day-to-day basis or month-to-month basis online. So we're just not really set up that way. So our relationships and how our customers and our members are managed is more of a physical relationship than an electronic relationship. So that plays into it. We also have I think Frank may have alluded to it, but we have maybe some technologically challenged people that may think it's a good idea. But at the end of the day, again, their email changes, their security settings on their computer are such that our emails get blocked, they unsubscribe. That creates additional manpower. We end up sending a statement out anyway. We maybe create some late fees on a customer's account that gives a bad taste in their mouth. So we try to be as proactive as possible with how we bill our customers. We bill roughly $16 million a year between member dues and golf carts. And for that $16 million, we spend $20,000 a year on postage. It's very intentional. We budget it. We email and send a statement to everybody. We're very proactive on that. Part of being proactive, again, is to keep that relationship going, making sure that we're being proactive and our customers aren't getting charged late fees if for some reason they didn't get the statement or they didn't get the email. So that $20,000 a year returns a collection rate of a bad debt collection rate of 0.04%. Yeah, we've written off $10,000 in 2 years.
When you said we experimented with this in the past, Cliff?
Yes.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
Mhm.
Did we see a bump up in the collections there as a result?
It wasn't yes. So it wasn't necessarily a bump up in bad debt at the time because we pulled the plug pretty quickly on it. But the efforts to pick up the phone, make phone calls, send a statement out,
All right. So that was a
anyway.
cost. Okay.
Yeah. So there is a cost there. And I'm not saying that we'll never get to that point. But for us, operationally, that $20,000 a year is very well spent. So that's why we do it. Oh, and we're never too proud to save a nickel here. Just want everybody to know that. Okay? This isn't, hey, we're not deciding to 20 grand's not a big deal. Every dollar is a big deal. Just want to clarify that.
For those who might be technically challenged, they only need to look at their rec card to know that their annual dues are needing to be paid because the date is right there. As far as electronic communications, we just sent out a mass email for people to vote in an election. That's something that we do every year. I don't know what the bounce back rate was because I'd imagine thousands of emails went out. And so we're also sending out emails now which duplicate the information that's on a paper invoice. And again, that paper invoice, people can still get both if that's what they want. But I don't understand, if we're able to have elections by voting on an email system, we can go and book tea times electronically. Residents take advantage of that all the time. I can see my itinerary. There's lots that we can do electronically. And I mean, unless there's some overwhelming burden that would make this difficult to implement, I don't see why we can't get with the program in the electronic age and do what the Egyptians do. Let's dance.
We have comments from the committee at all?
I think you made a really good point about it's sometimes tough to make that determination. Are we stepping in? I think it's a fine idea, suggestion to consider going forward. I don't know how to frame it, but I'd love to see Sun City West be more modern in the future. I think myself and other residents would take advantage of that, but I do appreciate the operational challenges. It's more, I don't know whether it's a suggestion or a recommendation.
David?
You know, it's not a bad idea. In my own particular case, I would probably opt to do both, electronic and paper. And the reason for that, maybe I'm atypical, I get 100 emails a day. And sometimes more than that from a variety of different things. And, you know, it doesn't take very many days before I'm 300 to 400 emails down my list. And I don't remember what I have there. The paper, whether it's from Sun City or other places, I still get paper from it. And remember, I work for the government, and if you didn't have a piece of paper, it never happened. Okay? So I understand what you're trying to accomplish, and I don't disagree with it at all. But again, I look at that and I go, it seems like it's a simple system the way that they have it now. You know, Gary and I were whispering with each other over here about opt-in, opt-out. You know, which way would you go and which would be the easier way to do it? And I struggle again with the policy versus the operational aspect. I mean, there's been a number of times I look at it and go, to me, how do operations folks go do what they need to go do? So like last year, I asked for a bunch of data from the HR people. And I got told I couldn't get it because that was an operational thing. And I'm sitting here going, how can you formulate policy when you don't have the ability to ask for data? So I struggle with this constantly in terms of how do we set policy? So really, you know, the policy statement in my mind is how do you communicate to the residents? Not just on this, but in every way. That's really the policy statement in my mind. So anyway, you know, I'll stop with that. But, you know, we can get into a deep philosophical discussion of how far do you want to take this. So I'll just stop with there. And that's something the board can ponder. So,
Mr. Bosak?
For me, it's policy versus procedure. We're policy, they're procedures. If we have a suggestion to make, they go to the drawing board, they do the research that Cliff has done, they come back with a recommendation, doable or not doable. Here's the procedure that we would put in place to do that. We need to stick with policy.
Do we have any other comments from the committee? Okay, let's open it up to any comments from the floor. Do we have any comments? Thank you.
Gwen Rhodes, 125791. I am a homeowner in Maricopa County. Every year, I get a physical bill from Maricopa County. I appreciate getting that bill. I understand what Frank's talking about. What I like about that, and that's where I'd really like to see the future of this, is I get the opportunity to pay by e-check. And if I pay by e-check, there's no fee. If I pay by credit card, there's a fee. But I get the physical bill, and I appreciate getting the physical bill. Thank you.
Jolene Pieskowski, 132268. I totally agree with Frank in the sense that we can train our residents that they need to look for their statement in their email. They have it on their rec card, that's the anniversary date, okay? So it's just a matter of implementing it. And I get what you guys are saying, it's policy procedure, but $15,000, I get 2 statements. Then something has to happen that I can get 1 envelope with 2 statements in it. I mean, I don't know, how much do we pay for an envelope to get mailed? Does anyone know?
It's pure speculation, you know, you can
I mean,
buy 100 envelopes and divide it by
and I just
100.
know that, I mean, just the paper and everything else, could we not put those together? I mean, is there not a program that we can say?
Is that a suggestion?
Yeah, I mean, could we
Okay.
not put a statement together that would say, Jolene Piaskowski, 132-668?
Okay, that's a variation from what we're talking about, but I think that that's accept as a suggestion.
You know, I mean, just because of postage and paper and everything
Okay.
else could
Thank
cut
you.
down on expenses.
Lowell Ash, number 127066. I agree 100% with Frank. This is an optional program. What I heard from Mr. Swan with respect sounded to me more like excuses of why they just didn't want to do it. Seems to me that when a person comes here to the community and they go in and they have that face-to-face sign-in or registration or whatever you call it, that would be one of the things that would be easy to do at that point in time. And I personally prefer everything electronically. Unlike whoever said, throw the stuff in the trash. I just get almost nothing by paper. So I don't know what the committee will do, but Mr. Swan is here and he's hearing feedback from others. So I would recommend that you maybe take another.
May I make a statement? To be clear, there's going to be a cost associated with chasing down payments from people who opt out. Okay? So when you factor that cost in, it doesn't, first of all, there's not a $20,000 savings because you still have people that are going to select both or select one. Okay? So there's still a cost there with the additional cost of chasing this down, as well as the headaches and heartaches that go along with late fees with customers, as well as maybe someone going out of town and them going into bad debt collections, okay? When you factor all of that into the amount of savings that there would be, I don't believe it's 75% of the community, but that would just increase all of those costs to us operationally. It doesn't make sense to offer that because the operational savings are not going to be there at the end of the day. So that's the why, okay? And again, it's something down the road we could move towards, but we're just not ready yet to do that.
What would it take to
It's
get
an
ready?
operational.
Thank you.
What would it take to get ready?
Can I answer that?
Yeah, the question's coming to me.
No.
No, the question comes to me.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. So we have an issue that we're dealing with our IT. We're demanding much more out of our IT infrastructure than it was ever designed for. So we're in the throes of looking at that now. So to answer your question, when will it be ready? I don't know. I'm not sure. But I do know that we're proactively looking at it. You know, is this a bad idea? Probably not. Are we ready for it? Probably not. You know, but that's my position. That's my opinion. I don't even vote on the committee. So.
Final comment was that I'll just remind Mr. Swan that he would, at the end of his statement, he said, we're not too proud to try to save a buck. If it was even 5,000, it's worthwhile.
Well, I think you would see that every person sitting on this dais would say that very same thing. We're not too proud to save that money. We know $15,000 is a lot of money, you know, but.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Nick Turner, 131829. I think this is yet another example of complexity, and we have what appears to be a simple solution which will save us money. But when this has been tried in the past, it's resulted in complexity and more effort from people within the administration. And although there are a lot of good suggestions about how we can save money, one thing that we do need to be aware of is that when you save money in one area, very, very frequently you're adding cost in others. And the trade-offs are not quick, easy, and simple as they would appear to be on the surface. And I think what we've seen today is an example of that. We've dug down, we've gone one level down, we've gone 2 levels down, and we've discovered lots of complexity. We could save $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 on the distribution of annual statements, and we can spend $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 on chasing up the resulting delayed payments that come as a result of that, and chasing up the people who've got bad email addresses and never got their bills. So we just need to be careful, be thoughtful, and let the administration think about the processes that they have and the processes that they can support. And that the governing board and the committees like Budget and Finance need to be supporting the administration and providing the funding that can improve the processes that can actually save us money, rather than just shifting cost around, which is what we appear to be doing here.
Do we have anyone else? Okay, do we have anyone on YouTube, Christine?
We have several comments on YouTube. For our members who are listening and participating from home, there are some members who have made several comments. Rather than break them up, I'm going to put them together as we would here in the room. So number one is Mystical Michelle 127597. I will read them in entirety. Thank you for the recommendation. I would gladly opt out. So make the recommendation to the governing board to add an opt-out feature to all residents of paper billing. Stunned but not surprised at the operational response. Duplicate addresses can easily be merged. Operations does not know if they will have to chase anything down. This is clear speculation. I will go on to the next member. I didn't know if you wanted to respond, Chairman Rhodes, so that's why
There's
I
nothing
paused.
I can say. These are editorial comments. So
Phil Rosak, I agree, and we should identify all printed materials from Sun City West to residents and allow to opt out of physical delivery and only have electronic delivery. Jack Leary, 128260. I like the idea of having an opt-in, opt-out option, but we have to remember that if we implement opt-in, opt-out, we're likely going to have an IT impact. I believe those are all, I'm going to just, because I went a little out of order to put things together, I wanted to be sure. Those are all the comments we have at this time.
okay, thank you. We need to make, yes, Cliff.
Just one clarification. We have the ability to do it. So it's not that the IT infrastructure isn't there. It's just operationally, it doesn't make sense for us in looking at the information that we have in front of us. In light of trying to do this a few years ago, all the complications that came about. And it's about the information that's in the system that we have, okay? We also have members who, at different times, their dues come due. They don't all come due. Just because you're living in a household doesn't mean that both memberships are lined up, okay? So they're not. So we have to print a statement per member, once again, not per household. So there's a lot of operational heartaches and costs associated with doing this if we do it. But the IT ability is there. It's the practical nature of whether it makes sense operationally. We don't feel that it does.
Thank you for that clarification. I didn't understand that. We have to take final disposition on this. And I'm trying to frame in my mind what it is that we can do. There is no policy to change. This is, no matter how you define this, this is a business practice. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I'm not sure where policy ends and micromanagement begins. You know, we have issues here that I'm not certain that really belong at the Budget and Finance Committee, but so I'm going to open it up, and I'm going to, Mr. Brignano, I'm going to ask you, what do you want done? I mean, to put a final disposition on this, tell me what you think we should do.
Right now, all I'm hearing is that there's nothing we can do. And if you want to know what I think we should do, it's implement this policy. It's an operational thing to do. Cliff said we have the ability to do it. I've had my home now since 2012, and at no time was I ever asked if I wanted to opt out of getting a paper invoice. Maybe that was offered to some people and not all, or maybe I just don't remember. But in this day and age, as far as the issue of two separate invoices going to one address at two separate times, again, it goes back to you look on your rec card. People know when their annual dues are due. I also play golf with a couple of guys that are 90 years old, and boy, they can get around that smartphone like it's nothing. And so people in this community are highly intelligent. We know when our bills are due. We can rely on email. But for those who choose not to, they still have the ability to get paper. We're not looking to do away with something except a lot of expense. But I'm not sure that we can do anything because we're a policy-making committee. We're not telling management what to do.
Cliff?
Frank, I believe when we talked about this back in August, you had asked why you hadn't been receiving emails of your statement. And my response to that was, you have been receiving emails from us. And you said you couldn't find the emails.
And your memory is correct, and the email came in 2 days later. So I got the email, my wife got the email, I got a paper invoice, my wife got a paper invoice.
Okay, we need to, we're belaboring this. Let's try to come to some closure. Ms. Callis?
I agree that this probably isn't in our realm, but we do need to have some way of passing forward, whether it's a suggestion that we have down and maybe that gets forwarded through Cliff or what have you. But we should be able to send suggestions somehow to our governing board so that they can review them and let them be the deciding factor to do so. But to just say, sweep it under the rug and not consider our people out there who depend on us, and it is a money issue. There is some dollars to it. Times are changing. Maybe a few years ago, there weren't as many tech-savvy people here as there are today, and in 5 years from now, there's going to be a whole lot more. I'm just saying that we should figure out some kind of vehicle, whether it's through Cliff, to take suggestions, or whatever it may be, but we do have to do something.
Okay, does anyone have a recommendation that they want to frame? Thank you.
I support what Lynn was just saying wholeheartedly. I know that I've said a bit about it here today and in the past. None of these sorts of changes are going to be easy, and we've seen that over and over again. The staff has come back with some very enlightening data every time we think we have a bright idea, right? Sometimes there's more to this than it seems. Believe it or not, this seems like a really small idea. I believe it falls more in the bucket of strategic planning. Our technology as an overall, and this is nothing, no indictment to anyone on the staff. Everybody works really hard. They're very capable individuals. But we as a community have underinvested in technology for years and years, and the chickens have come to roost. Many of our operations staff are just held, they work really, really hard, and they deserve better tools to do their job. We as a community deserve better tools as well. even though this is such a small thing and the technology is there, right? But there's more to it. There's collections, there's reporting, there's compliance, there's going to be all kinds of things that pop their head up. So believe it or not, I think this may be better bundled as part of a strategic view of we really need to look at a cohesive payment processing platform for the future. That would enable us to do something like this and track it properly without incurring more costs. Now that's a much bigger task. I support it. I think it's a great idea. I do believe this is right on the cusp of, we don't want to be telling our staff how to do their job, but this is something that we see as a feature that, some of us see, I should say, a feature that we'd like to offer in the future. So it's not really, I don't have a cohesive recommendation at this point, Dick, but I support what Lynn has advised. We should have the way to forward these concepts, ideas, and suggestions to the governing board for deliberation. And yes, I'm on the governing board. I'm saying to tell myself the same thing, but I think as a community, as a committee, each of the committees, standing committees, should have that capability.
I'm trying to frame in my mind what we would say. You know, we're not asking to change a policy. We're basically, we're looking to operations to say, we think we like the idea. We think it's a really good idea. But we also acknowledge that there are consequences, financial consequences to this. But we want to have this feature available.
I've done this in the past. I'm going to frame a recommendation.
Okay.
You guys can shoot it down or not.
Okay.
My recommendation is that we as a committee recommend to our governing board that the governing board reviews the strategic technology plan for Sun City West, inclusive of many of the concepts that we've had this year. My recommendation is that.
So actually, this doesn't really address
Nope.
a yes or a no to Mr.
Because we do
Bagnatos.
not vote here. We're saying, do we have a recommendation on Mr. Bagnato's suggestion? I don't think we do, but that's my recommendation, is that we need to include this or a way to frame suggestions to our governing board.
Well, that would be consistent with our recommendation on credit card policies as well. I mean, it is basically, we need a more holistic analysis of our technology. Would you state that for us, Christine?
I would recommend that the Sun City West Governing Board evaluate our technology strategy inclusive of all payment processing platforms and financial reporting.
Okay, do we have a second on that? Second? Okay, let's start. Ms. Kellis?
Yes.
Mr. Bosak?
Yes.
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 And definitely yes.
Okay, very good. Very good job. Thank you for pushing through that. It was a little abstract, but we do have a comment online. Is that right?
A couple more came in. I don't know if they're if that's out of order.
No, please. Sometimes I get.
127597 Mystical Michelle. This conversation question how valid the email data system is. If invoices are a concern, what about the recall notices or the upcoming vote? Are those in a different database? This conversation question how valid the email data system is. If invoices are a concern, what about the recall notices or the upcoming vote? Are those in a different database?
I have absolutely no idea.
I can answer that.
Yeah.
I knew he could.
Yes, they are the same database. So being proactive with the recall, it's different than sending an invoice. But yes, if the member is questioning why they haven't received their electronic voting notification, we would depend on them to contact us to say, hey, how come I didn't receive my notice? And then we would start a process of getting the correct information, or, oh no, we have your correct email address, you must be blocking it on your end, or there must be some security setting on your end stopping it from coming in. So that's the email addresses, excuse me, are from the database, and then the notifications, I believe, are sent through a third party. But so yes and no, but the emails are coming from our system.
Thank you. Okay, so.
There's one more
Okay.
from the same, but thank you. Michelle 127597 recommends a policy be written that allows residents the options to opt in, opt out of annual invoices.
Okay, thank you. We have come to the end of our meeting. I am going to ask all of the committee to individually, if you have any comments, and Ms. Kellis, I'll start with you. Do you have any comments in closing?
No comment.
Okay, Mr. Bosak?
None.
I do have one. Last meeting, Budget and Finance Committee reviewed our financial reports, and we talked about a recommendation. We formulated a recommendation related to lawn bowling. But as a part of all the conversations, we talked about the use of the allocations budget items and how they were used, how we can use them, the fact that we were running low. In my review of our policies, I don't see a policy around what those allocation budget items are and how they're used. So for future consideration, Dick, I believe we may want to evaluate that together with our operations staff and make a policy around what is an allocation item, and take a stab at defining how those would best be used. It seemed a little gray.
Okay,
No action today, just a recommendation.
Yeah, I'd have to spend more time to understand that, but, so thank you. I think that's a valid point, though. So, Mr. Parsons?
Yes, Chairman Rhodes, I have a question just about the capital projects. What's the schedule for reviewing those, and what's the deadlines for getting?
We're going to, the Budget and Finance Committee has canceled a meeting in December and the first one in January. On January the 16th, which will be our next scheduled meeting, we're going to focus on the capital items. We have two issues that we'll be dealing with, is the over 50 and under 50, over 50,000 and under 50,000. But we are going to deal with those with some sense of purpose. So that will be done very soon. The bottom line here is on February the 20th is when when Mr. Schwind will be presenting the budget for the upcoming year. And we want to be sure that we try to have that completed by then. If not, we still have options to add into it. But we're going to aggressively address it starting January 16th.
Okay, thanks. That was my only comment.
I did neglect in my comments to ask for an update on the e-check.
Oh.
One of my favorite topics for the past 2 years.
Good question, Christina. No, I just wanted to give an update on the ability for our members through the portal to pay with e-check, which was one advancement we were looking to add, or benefit, or one advancement we were looking to add to the portal, and that currently exists now. We have customers using it. So I encourage you in the community to get on there, and you can pay your dues that way. We just have member dues because it's only through the portal, which only has billed charges, and the only billed charge we put out is annual assessments. So that's a way to make an electronic payment, avoiding using a credit card, which avoids those credit card fees to the association. So that ability currently exists now, and again, I encourage you to get on there and use it. We're still, we've got a few customers who've used it, but we want to make sure we can work out the kinks with that process if they exist. So there's an update on each.
Let me give you a little more context to that. If you all will recall, we have discussed at length the issues that, what do we do regarding the credit card fees and such. And we really struggled with that. And one of the issues was every time we talk about one thing we wanted to do, well, we can't do it because, and central to that was this particular issue of the e-checks. So we're making progress. We're not there yet, but we are making progress. So kudos to you all for that.
Well, thank you. So the other area when you say we're not there yet, there's a new version of the portal with TEI. It's not available to us yet because of the customized programming that we have, but once that's available, they're developing the ability to charge member credit with e-check. And once we have that capability, then you could go on and charge member credit and unbilled charge. But you could charge member credit, then giving you the ability to pay with member credit at various points of sale throughout the community. So
Yeah, this gives
that'll
it-
be available eventually, but we're kind of working towards there. It's no deadline there yet, but we're working on it.
Even for the next budgetary process, it seems therefore, Cliff, thanks to the staff's hard work with the vendor, we could consider providing an incentive or some other pricing strategies as we head into our budget season next year, correct?
Yeah, I believe Mr. Bozak had said options. We need to give people options. So that's what we're working on. And this is a good example of bringing something up in a committee and getting action on it. We talked about, for example, opting out of statements. So, this is a way to get that done, and that process worked in this case. So we're all ears for sure. We just want you to know that, operationally, there's things we have to consider, and we'll get there.
Thank you.
Mr. Parsons, do you have anything else?
No.
Mr. Brignato?
Only one, and I think it bears repeating. Our HR manager really, really took good care of us and made sure that we held the line as closely as we could on health insurance costs. I think you should be applauded.
Do we have anyone in the room that would like to make some final comments? Christine, do we have anyone online that has made final comments?
No, not at this time.
Okay, I'm going to exercise my right as a homeowner to make comments. I have prepared some comments. I am going to turn the committee over to Christine, where she will serve as Chairman Pro Tem. While I walk down to the podium, I will sign in as a homeowner. I will make my comments, and I will return and assume the role as chairman, where we'll finish the exercise of the committee. Okay.
For those of you old enough to remember, I am in control. Breaking the tension slightly. The chairperson recognizes Dick Rhodes.
My name is Dick Rhodes. My rec card number is 125790. I am dutifully signing in. Madam Chairman, I have a statement that I would like to have entered into the minutes of the meeting. It will take a little over 2 minutes, so I would also request at this point an additional time.
If there's consensus with my committee members, you may proceed.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
I am grateful that I could selectively choose the location of which I wish to retire. I am grateful for the opportunity to serve my friends and my neighbors of Sun City West. Sometimes I ask myself, is it worth it? But the answer is yes. Make no mistake, this is a referendum that will dramatically, adversely affect the entire community. I have spent a lifetime building my reputation, working diligently to improve the lives and the health of our nation's veterans and a life of public service. I know exactly what the objective of the recall is all about: scorched earth. Fire and vilification of 3 governing board members, destroy the continuity of the governing board, pit neighbor against neighbor, and disrupt the serenity of the community. All with the objective of stacking the deck with their own appointments so they can revive their pet projects and fire the general manager. They have weaponized the recall process. Their approach is allegations of misconduct, incompetence, disagreement with decisions, to create no confidence in the volunteers who step forward, animosity and distrust against the RCSCW staff. Their modus operandi is based on opinion, conjecture, and facts taken out of context. The most alarming issue is their disregard for existing policy and an obvious lack of understanding of the consequences of mismanaging our investments. The Budget and Finance Committee and the 9-member governing board recently confirmed that our professional advisory firm is in complete compliance with our policy. There's no established manifest provided by the recall committee, so I have captured several of the more contentious points. It's embarrassing to even stand here and talk about these allegations. 1, we spend money recklessly. We have far too many employees who make $100,000 a year. We should compare our budget process with the assessments of our neighbors in Sun City. Tim Hurley is a friend of the general manager. A CPA was not appointed as the treasurer. All governing board members are paid $100,000, and Jack Larry is an autocrat. My wife compares their allegations to the game whack-a-mole. Every time one issue is refuted, another one equally as silly surfaces. Perhaps the most disturbing fact is that the recall committee members remain anonymous. They will not identify themselves. And this is a very critical issue that goes to the heart of a healthy debate and understanding the views of everyone involved. I suspect that we will have multiple candidates to choose from in the March elections. 1/3 of the governing board is replaced every year. Pay attention to whom you're voting for. Challenge them with tough questions. Know who you're voting for. I encourage everyone to vote their conscience. Do your own research, not what someone else has told you. All meetings, documents, and policies are a matter of public record. You have the right to contact your governing board members, the president of the governing board, committee chairs. Become directly engaged, not filtered through the internet, which is the equivalent of professional wrestling. We have all learned that in the past few years, there is nothing more ridiculous and unbelievable than the term fact-checked as seen in social media. One final point, for those who step forward to run for the board, I would say you should have one more criteria that you should consider: courage. Courage to stand in this arena, as Teddy Roosevelt said. That is a new criteria. You don't know, you might be the next to be recalled. Thank you.
We've accepted your comments as you requested, and we will enter them into the record. I'll open the floor while I'm still Chairman Pro Tem to any residents who wish to step up and make any comments. We do have a comment online in the meantime. Mystical Michelle, 127597. It is totally out of line to allow the committee chair to use this forum as a platform on the recall issue. Thank you, Michelle. Your concern is noted. I will now turn the chairmanship of the meeting back to Dick Rhodes.
Thank you. The final announcements that I have is that our next meeting will be January the 16th, And it will be in this room. It will be at 9 a.m. And at that, the meeting is hereby adjourned.